Hi friends, welcome back. Let's talk today about the domain as far as it is in the real world. All right, before we go into the domain and how it works in the real world, quick refresh on our real numbers. We haven't gotten to imaginary numbers yet, so when we do, then we'll talk about that. But for right now, real numbers include both rational and irrational numbers. Irrational ones are decimals that never end and never repeat, so usually pi and non-perfect square roots and e, which we saw in some of our other functions that we've done. Now, of our rationals, we can have fractions, decimals. Inside all of that, we can have our natural numbers, which whole numbers include natural numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Integers include both whole numbers and natural numbers. Now, fractions and decimals are not integers, whole, or natural counting numbers. So just a quick refresh on that so you've got that straight in your head. If you have not written that down, that's a good thing to write down. Let's talk about that now with our first example. All right, so I actually live in Alaska and it's the middle of summer right now. And so I had a student bring me a basil plant because it's our planting season here in Alaska. So this basil plant that the student brought me sprouted 5 days before she brought it to me, right? I then grew it in its pot until it got to about 8 inches tall, and then I planted it in the ground. So what we want to do is talk about the height of that plant given any day that I have it, right? So it was, let's say that I think I planted it 12 days after I got it. So let's say 12 days later, 12 days later. Okay, so looking at that, what is our domain going to be? So what we're doing is we're putting in the day, like day number 1, day number 2, and then we're getting out the height of the plant, right? So our domain, should we do real numbers or should we do integers? Well, if you think about it like this, if you think about your days being just like day 1, day 2, but also days can be, that would be integers, right? Day 1, day 2, but you can also do like day 1.5. There's no reason that we couldn't put in 1.5 days and get out the height of the plant. So instead of choosing just integers, let's talk about that and use real numbers. Now, what would be a good set of numbers for that domain? Well, if I got it, it started sprouting 5 days before I got it, and then I put it in the ground 12 days later. So it was growing from 5 days before I got it until 12 days after I got it. So what that domain would look like is it would fall between -5, because that's 5 days before I got it, to 12. And that's when I put it into the ground. And I don't want to use X. We're going to use D for days for our domain here. So the days can be anywhere from -5 to +12, and that would be a reasonable domain. And writing it like this is just a fancy way of saying, hey, it comes in between those two numbers. Let's talk about another one. Let's say we've got this pizza delivery driver, and they took 22 minutes to deliver a pizza 8 miles away. Let T represent the time it took the driver to go D of T miles. So T is the time, and then so we're putting in the time and we're getting out D of T, which is the distance, which is miles. So we're putting in time. In time, again, let's talk about that domain. The time can be anywhere from 0 to 22 minutes because that's when they delivered that pizza. So our domain is 0 to, and we're talking time, to 22 minutes. It can include 0, so I'm putting the equal sign under here, and it can include 22, so I'm putting the equal sign under there. So what would be a better choice here, integers or real numbers? Again, integers do not include things like fractions and decimals, and we could say for our time, we could say 1.5 minutes, what has happened there? So we don't want to do just integers. I think real numbers is a better choice. If you had rational numbers, that would be an even better choice because real numbers also includes negative. I guess rational does too, but as far as this goes, real numbers or rational numbers, that both of those would work. Okay, so if you have any questions about real world domain, let your teacher know. Otherwise, we will dive a little bit more deeply into domain and range in other functions, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks so much.